The title of my presentation is The Mariana Trench, Geography and Exploration. So, first of all, what is the Mariana Trench? Well, it's a deep underwater valley, a break in the Earth's crust, about 2,500 kilometers long. It's the deepest part of the world's oceans. At the deepest point, a place known as the Challenger Deep, it's 11 kilometers below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, near the island of Guam. This is approximately 2,400 kilometers east of Manila in the Philippines, which you can see here on slide 1. Okay, there are about 20 similar trenches in the world's oceans. They're formed when two plates of the Earth's crust meet and one is forced under the other. There are several reasons that scientists explore these trenches. One is to find microorganisms that could lead to new discoveries, for example, in medicine. Another reason is to examine the rocks and hopefully learn more about why earthquakes and tsunamis take place. And lastly, to maybe find new species, because it's possible that there are forms of life down there that no one has ever seen before, which is very exciting. Although they have sent men up to the moon, up until now, the very deep ocean has still not been explored properly. The depth of the Mariana Trench was measured by British scientists in 1875 using a rope, and again in 1951 using an echo sounder. But it was only recently that people actually went down into the trench itself. The oceanographer Jack Pickard and US Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh made the first expedition to the bottom of the trench in 1960. They used a US Navy bathyscaphe, the Trieste bathyscaphe. That's a bathyscaphe there. Up to then, most deep-sea diving vessels had been bathyspheres, small round steel containers that were lowered from the ship onto the seabed by a cable. A bathyscaphe has no cable. As you can see in this picture, it has a bathysphere at the bottom for the crew, but above it there's a large float. The float is filled with gasoline. This is let out and replaced with seawater when the bathyscaphe has to descend into the water. To return to the surface, the bathyscaphe also has iron ballast, so heavy weights, which is dropped to make the vessel lighter and help it ascend to get back up to the surface. The system worked perfectly. However, when the Trieste finally reached the bottom of the trench, the crew had used almost half their air supply. The descent had taken 5 hours. They only stayed on the bottom for about 20 minutes and then ascended again. While they were exploring the trench, the crew noted that the seabed was soft and featureless. They also reported seeing a flat fish, but this was later disputed by other scientists. The Trieste bathyscaphe reached the Mariana Trench 5 hours after it had begun its descent from the surface. However, whilst it was descending, one of the windows in the vessel cracked under the intense pressure. The two crew members were concerned about this, and so they reduced the time they had originally planned to spend on the bottom. When they had completed a quick observation of the environment, they returned to the surface.
Tom presented an overview of the earliest expeditions to the Mariana Trench. I'd like to tell you about a more recent high-profile exploration of the same area. Despite all the scientific interest in the trench, there haven't been many expeditions. This is mainly due to the huge costs involved in getting so far below the surface. So, as we heard from Tom, the Trieste explored the region in 1960. The next expedition took place on the 26th of March 2012. The person who undertook this descent was the film director James Cameron, whose most famous film is probably Titanic, made in 1997. He went down alone in a new type of deep-sea vessel that used special foam for flotation and had engines to power it. He also took with him more scientific equipment than the earlier expedition. The purpose of his journey into the deep was to confirm what the Trieste had seen and to find out as much as he could about the deep sea environment. Once Cameron had reached the bottom, he was able to explore the seabed. He spent 2.5 hours there recording information using digital cameras. While he was driving around on the seabed, he also observed that the terrain was soft and flat. But unlike the previous expedition, he saw no fish, only small crustaceans, creatures like shrimps or prawns. So, these two expeditions were mainly about proving that people could reach the bottom of the deep ocean. However, the pictures that James Cameron took while exploring the trench have been made into a 3D film called Deep Sea Challenge. Cameron has said that he hopes this will inspire other potential explorers, just as the photographs of the Trieste journey had inspired him as a child.